Marian here. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing my story with postpartum anxiety and how I have, I think officially, can we stamp it, overcome it, and I was just able to leave my kids for 5 whole days and go down to Florida and have the best time and not be anxious while I was away, which was a huge achievement for me. So I'm going to share all about this with you guys. I think it's such an important topic to talk about and share each other's stories and what we've done and how it works and all of that. And definitely feel free to leave any questions, comments, or talk about your story in the comments below. I love to hear from you guys as well. And this video is being sponsored by BetterHelp, which you guys know I love and have worked with a bunch over the past year. I currently have a therapist from BetterHelp right now who I love, and that has also been a huge component in helping relieve my anxiety and leaving my kids and doing things on my own. So I'm very thankful to BetterHelp. BetterHelp is a therapy service. It's really unique. They have a different approach and a different structure than traditional therapy, which makes it accessible and affordable and convenient. So I'm going to share a little bit more about that right now, and then I'm going to jump into my story with postpartum anxiety.
I'll know that seeing a therapist is good for us, but some of us, myself included, just struggle to find the time, the means, and sometimes the funds to really stick to therapy. And that's what I love about BetterHelp. Their options are super convenient. You just go on their website, you can find a therapist that's licensed for where you're located, and then you have the flexibility to choose what type of person you want to work with and how you want to work with them, be it online, on the phone, even messaging them. And if you don't like the one you're first matched up with, you can switch, which I know is always a stressful thing for me. And therapy can just be so helpful through any sort of life transition and anything that you're struggling with. I know for me, I always minimize my problems and think like they're not that big a deal. But then I find when I actually work with a therapist, I benefit so much.
Okay, so like many women, I did not think that I had postpartum anxiety. I was very aware of postpartum depression, and I vividly remember before my first son was born, sitting my husband down and being like, you need to look out for these symptoms, and listed them out for him. And I was like, if I have these, you need to get me help. I was very paranoid about postpartum depression. And as I've shared many times on this channel, I did not have postpartum depression. I was very lucky. I had what I called postpartum elation. The second that baby left my body, I was high, like literally so happy, and that stayed with me for months and months after the baby was born. I was just physically, mentally high. My hormones were great. Everything was great. But on the back end of that, and around like the 1-year mark for each of my 3 babies, I definitely started to experience a lot of anxiety, but it didn't come out in the traditional sense or the common way. I mean, I guess it's hard to say. There's so many iterations of this, but basically around the 1-year mark was when I would slow down in breastfeeding, go back to work. You know, life would just shift as we came out of the newborn cocoon bubble. And the thing I struggled with most was having anyone else watch my kids. So much so that I hated leaving them for any amount of time to do anything. And that was definitely hard, especially on my husband, who wanted to, you know, go out, have fun. You know, he was like, all right, we've, you know, been home for a year with the baby, let's go out to dinner. And I was like, no. Thankfully, his parents lived nearby, and I was okay with them, you know, being family, but I still just could not enjoy myself when the babies weren't with me. And I found that very difficult because it was always, you know, a big thing to get out of the house, find a babysitter. We actually never used a babysitter, but that's a whole nother story. But we did use my husband's parents. But, you know, arrange things with them, label everything, get everything ready to go. Even though they didn't need all that, they could handle it. But, you know, I had to have everything just the way it needed to be before I could go. And then the whole time we were out, I was just not enjoying myself. I just wanted to know that the baby was okay. I had lots of like random fears and intrusive thoughts about it. And so for a long time, I just didn't really go out. And part of that was my second baby turned 1 right when the pandemic started. So that kind of worked out timing wise because right on that 1 year mark, we didn't have to separate from him for another year, basically. So that kind of helped me, but also probably harmed me because I didn't get the practice in of leaving. And it wasn't until my oldest child was 6 last year that I actually went on a girls trip overnight. Me and my friends went to the beach. We had a lot of fun, and I didn't feel that overwhelming anxiety, like I just physically couldn't be there. So it was the first time I really was able to have fun and leave the kids for a night. But that next morning, and I knew that this would happen, so I kind of had prepped things this way. As soon as I woke up, I was like, I need to get home. I was like, I cannot enjoy a breakfast. I cannot hang out. I need to get home. So it was fine for like the night, and I had fun. But then when it was time to go, I was like, I need to go right now. And I was trying to think back if I left them any other night before. I must have at some point, but I honestly can't remember. If I did, it wasn't much. They have had, sleepovers at their grandparents' house, but we lived so close to each other, it didn't feel like as much of a, separation. But this time I was, 2 hours away, and that was hard, but I enjoyed it and was just ready to get back that morning when I woke up. But this year, this past week, my kids are now almost 8, 5.5, and 2.5. I went away on 2 different girls' trips that sort of merged in the same timeline. From Wednesday until Sunday, I was in Florida without the kids or my husband, and I did not experience the anxiety of leaving them, which was amazing. The only moment I had where I felt a little uneasy was one of the nights, Thursday night, I was by myself in the hotel just because it was 2 different trips that I was jumping from one to the other. And things were just a little bit crazy, and I messed up my hotel, I messed up the Uber, I messed up the scheduling. It was late at night. I had not eaten the entire day. We were at Disney, and I was had walked a marathon, not eaten, not drinking anything. So I was kind of at my wit's end physically. And then I talked to my husband, and things kind of spiraled, and I just wanted to get home. But as soon as the next trip started the next day, I was fine. So I was very proud of myself for getting to that point. And I've been thinking a lot about how I got there and what I could share with you guys about things that helped. And first I want to say that I think recognizing the anxiety was something I missed for years and years, and I just felt like I was that kind of a parent. I was an attachment parent. I barely used strollers. I carried my kids on me at all times. I never had a babysitter, never had a nanny, never had childcare. I just really enjoyed being with my kids all the time. They did go to preschool, and that actually really helped because I learned to trust other people taking care of my kids. And again, just more time with my in-laws watching them and stuff like that helped. So time was a big part of it. But yeah, just learning to recognize oh, I do have anxiety about leaving the kids. A big help with that was talking to my friends and learning that what was sort of more normal, and hearing from them about that they didn't feel that way, when they went out to dinner with friends and things like that, made me more aware that my anxiety around leaving the kids wasn't just attachment parenting, but was probably linked to some postpartum stuff. My hormones in general, just by the way, always shift around that 1 year mark. That's when all my thyroid issues started. So I just want to share about that because everyone talks about the postpartum period being right when the baby's born, but so much stuff can happen in that year, even 2 years after the baby's born, because it takes 9 to 10 months to grow the baby. So sometimes it takes another 9 to 10 months for things to regulate and then to realize that there's an issue. So again, because I had made it to the 1 year mark with no depression, no anxiety, I was not even thinking that some of my anxiety could be postpartum anxiety. Anyways, so I think another part of the issue was, we had a lot of issues with our first pregnancy and ended up losing that one. And I think in my head, I kind of just carried around this idea that terrible things could happen. And so I think a lot of my anxiety was linked back to that, and processing that in therapy was really helpful. And even though I didn't come to my therapist and say, I have postpartum anxiety, I just went in talking about one thing or another as we talked and came up with strategies to help me. She was very helpful in identifying these patterns for me. So that's another tip I want to share, is you don't always have to go into therapy knowing what the issue is. You can just kind of be like, I'm not feeling great about this or that. You kind of work through it in the therapy room. Okay, another thing that really helped me is just accepting that there is a time and a season for everything. Number one with that is postpartum body. So I know for me, there's so many people, everybody's body is different. So many people online, especially who literally bounce back after having that baby. It's like they never gained a pound, they're running around and all that. I have so many issues after I gave birth, each time something different. And I was just not back to my old self in any way. And a lot of the mental health things that helped were just accepting, like, okay, this is the season where I'm gonna just cuddle with the baby. I'm not gonna work out. I'm not gonna worry about my body and what I would like it to be and the energy I'd like it to have and things like that right now, because it's a season of just staying in and healing. And same with going on trips with friends and things like that. There was a lot of things I said no to because I knew my anxiety was high. I just didn't feel up to it, and I knew that there would be a time in the future where I would be. Funnily enough, I always said at 40, I would be getting my body back, being in shape, living my life. And I'm actually 39, so I'm a year ahead of the game. But I just had this idea in my head that when I was 40, that would be my time. I would be done with the baby phase in life and I would be ready for the next one. And I think that is sort of true, even though it wasn't 40 on the dot, but it was I was ready. I would get there in a few years. Although it's hard to think of these things in such a big timeline. To think when I had my first son, I was 8 years away from that. But, a lot of it is just accepting that life is long, hopefully, if we're lucky, and there are just times and seasons for everything. So this trip specifically, the things that I did that really helped me not be anxious. Number one, I printed out lists and timelines and everything that my husband would need, even though I know he's perfectly capable of getting the kids where they need to be, dressed in what they need, etc. Without it, it made me feel a lot more comfortable, and also that I felt like I had given him the gift of trying my best to do everything I could before I go to make things easier for him. So I prepped as much as I could. I prepped their outfits for each day because they're at camp. I also prepped their change of clothes and their swimwear and all of that to make things easier for him, because I didn't want him to be stressed, because that would stress me out. And he did great, by the way. Knocked it out of the park. Kids were so happy. They had a great time. The other thing that really helped is we're just in a different stage of life. So my youngest is 2.5, but he acts it is more like a 3.5-year-old if you see him. If you follow me on Instagram, you're watching him swim and hit golf balls and talk up a storm and count. And he's really, I honestly just a bigger kid than a 2.5-year-old. So it makes me feel more comfortable, because it didn't feel like I was leaving a little baby behind. He's very much a confident older toddler. And then my other kids are 5 and 7. So they're good to go. Having them be able to talk, share what's going on, talk to them, explain where I am really, really helped. And then just childcare situations. So my 2 older boys go to camp together now. This is the first time since back in the day in preschool that they've been on one schedule, and their camp is a lot of hours in the day. So before this summer, I was doing a lot of the bulk of the childcare for my middle son and my youngest, and everyone had a different drop off and pick up time, and it was just really a full day that was hard to transfer to somebody else to take care of, versus now the 2 older kids are at camp all day. They're on the same schedule. My youngest is in camp for half days, so that really helped. So I felt a lot more comfortable. And of course, my mother-in-law has watched the kids so much, she's so used to the routine, that sort of thing. And I felt like now was the time. By the way, I'm just remembering now, there was one other time I went away which was a few months ago with my husband for our anniversary. And I was definitely more anxious on that trip because he was with me. So the kids, didn't have a parent there. They were fine. Everything was fine. But that was one thing I knew that was going to help this trip, was just having my husband there. Makes me feel like less like we've both left kind of thing. Anyways, so that is really my story with anxiety when it comes to leaving the kids. I wouldn't say I've fully conquered it yet. We still don't really use babysitters very often, and I still don't love the idea of being away from them. Me and my husband have dreams of traveling and things like that. The two of us, that I know will happen like far in the future. At this point, I just want to take the kids with us and things like that. But again, seasons for everything. So if you guys have any questions, definitely leave them down below. Thank you so much to BetterHelp for the help you have personally given me, as well as my viewers here. Definitely check them out if you're considering therapy, and get help if you need help. I love you guys. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.